Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cindy Matthews, and I'm the Senior Service Hydrologist for the National Weather Service office here in Sacramento, California. And I've been asked to be your guest presenter today and talk about National Weather Service E19 data and what that means to me and to you. I want to start with this particular slide. We want it, but what is it? There's an amazing number of people out there who don't know what E19 data is. We'll start with the fact that E19 is one of those agency-specific things. It's one of those forms that started in the 1950s, National Weather Service Form E-19A46, whatever in the heck it is. It's a 13-page document that talks about the location for the official river forecast points. It's got what type gauge is there. It's when did the staff gauge go in and when did it change to a new location. What's the datum? What are the historical crests for this location? But it's all for those official river forecast points that the 123 National Weather Service offices use to forecast how high the rivers are going to get at specific important locations across the country. So that's what an E19 is. But what the E19 data has done is that terminology of E19 has morphed its way beyond the Weather Service into basically impact data. From now on, when you hear E19 data, think impact data. What stage at a stage on a river location? What happens at that point? What goes underwater? What isn't underwater? Things like that. So it's a morphed term that everybody seems to be using. I'm trying really hard to morph our cultural terminology into impact data instead. We're working on it. We'll get there. Another 50 years, we got it covered, right? So anyway, E19 data is synonymous with impact data. That is one page out of that 13-page form, and it's the most important one. The graphic, I'm afraid, here doesn't show you a whole lot, but we'll get closer to that in just a second. So, a few pictures here. Staff gauge at Moulton Weir, that's what you're looking at in this gauge. Near 79 feet, River Road is flooded. People shouldn't be driving through. On the bottom right, you can see that they still do. But the road is closed. That is a piece of impact data, or E19 data. That is information that is documented. It goes out on public products. It goes out to the local emergency management community so that they can activate public works or take other actions based on that information to close the road before the water actually starts going over. That's the biggest part of what an E19 or impact data is. So, how is it developed? I'm really happy to see so many people on this presentation today because you is how this is developed. It is a collection of information. It comes from public works, county emergency managers, the local boating community, flood control agencies, people driving out into a flood. Oh, that's a new noise. Okay. It's from media reports, after action reports of things that went underwater at a certain time or a certain date. All of that information being collected and documented and given to the National Weather Service, so that we can make it available in a format that it can be used in the next flood so we know more and better what to expect. So when we collect all this information, at first it's just information to be collected and organized. When we put it available for public products and to be used during warning situations, the wording associated with it is always coordinated with our local emergency managers. Because if I say that the boat arena is going to flood and they need to move the trailer houses out of the way, it's the locals that get impacted by that. So they have to agree with those statements first. So this is a coordinated effort to get the best piece of information available out. So how do we use it? The Weather Service uses this extensively. We have those traditional text flood warning products that go out. The river stage at Tahamer Bridge is 214 feet, rising to 230 feet. This impact will be 222 feet, Pelham's Bay Resort floods. Additional information like that. So it comes part of that public product. It's available on multiple web pages, both the National Weather Service AHAP's web page and on several of the River Forecast Center web pages. It's used in the State Federal Flood Operations Center as part of the incident action plans, and at California State OES as part of the impending impacts from the rising rivers. And of course, these days, social media is a big deal. So impacts are used on social media accounts, and we gather some of those new impacts from social media accounts. So it's used in a multitude of ways. So where is it? That's most important. Most people have the idea that I know where certain things happened at certain levels on the river, but where can you find it yourself? So there are several ways to make that happen. Well, the internal National Weather Service documentation and within our programs, you can't access it. But we do use it internally for generation of our web pages and our text products. The local National Weather Service pages and the National Water Hydrology page have those on them as well. If you look at the two images on here, on the left is the Sacramento National Weather Service's AHAPS page, Advanced Hydrologic Prediction Systems page, and the national version of it. Each of those green dots or colored dots is an official river forecast point for the National Weather Service. There is impact data available for all of these locations. Some of them have a few pieces of impact data. Some of them have lots. It just depends on the information we've been able to collect from the locals and coordinate that. It's a little harder to find impacts on levied river systems, but systems without levees, it's easier. So if we go to the local Sacramento Weather Service page, that's at weather.gov/Sacramento, or whatever your local Weather Service office page is. Above the maps on the right-hand side, there is a Rivers and Lakes drop-down menu. And under that drop-down menu, there's River Observations Map. If you select that, you get the local AHAPS page with all those dots on it. There are a lot of gauges here and official river forecast points. When you choose one of those dots, if you just mouse over the dot, you come up with the hydrograph for that location. In this case, it pops up in the upper right. It's the Sacramento River at Tehama Bridge, and there's 5 days of observed data and 5 days worth of forecast data for that location. But if you actually click on the dot, it'll bring up a new page. Here is your hydrograph at the top of that page. But if you scroll down, you get some more information, some local crests. There's a map associated with where the gauge is actually located. And scroll down even further and you finally get to that E19 or impact data. This piece of information agrees with our internal documentation and agrees with what's on the River Forecast Center page, which I'll show you soon. So that is how you get to impact data on all the river forecast points that are available on the National Weather Service pages. Here's a close-up. This is Tehama Bridge again, and you can see that at 218.3 feet, low-lying areas on the west side of the river south of the town of Tehama floods. But at 219 feet, the water is on the streets at the south end of Tehama. So as the river rises, you can see the increase in impacts and the more areas that are going underwater. That's the sort of information we want to collect. It's hard to get that. So anytime you can add these types of pieces of information for a forecast point, your local weather service person will take that information from you. As we continue down our list of where is it, I'm going to show you the California Nevada River Forecast Center webpage. There are 13 river forecast centers across the nation, and their web pages are all slightly different, but you should be able to find impact information on them all. Here's the California Nevada River Forecast Center page. And if you'll look on the right-hand side in the pink box, what you'll find is I have turned on the river forecast points. Those are the ones with the impact data. When I click on one of those dots, and again, I clicked on the Sacramento River at Tehama Bridge, you see a hydrograph. 5 days of observed on the left, 5 days worth of forecast on the right. In this case, the forecast data on the right is two-colored. The first part is green. That's the high confidence interval. That's going to happen. The pink out for day 2 through 5 is guidance information. So it's a little, there's a few parameters that might change. Maybe the rain stalls and the river doesn't get that high. Maybe there's a reservoir release upstream and it will change what the tail end of that forecast looks like in day 3 or 4. So it's not quite as high confidence there. But if you scroll down on this page, you go past some crests, both recent and historical crests. Again, a map of the location of the forecast point, so you can find it generally. And the local weather service forecast for that location. And eventually, you get to impact E19 information. Big list of things for Tehama Bridge. These are the same pieces of information that I showed you previously from the Weather Service page. The numbers are just in a reverse order. It's lowest to highest. But it is the same exact data, same exact wording. Back to our E19 information. Where is it? Our traditional text river products I mentioned before from the local Weather Service office. Truthfully, not many people see those anymore. Those are more what gets dropped into the county 911 center as a text product so they can rip and read the information. It's almost phasing its way out because we have new technologies, but that is still considered an operational product for us. And when we are going above a particular impact stage in our forecast period, the impact gets printed on this product, so it's available. And social media. Social media these days is the biggest way that the Weather Service puts any kind of warning or impending danger type information out to the public. Cache Creek at Rumsey Bridge. We were having a problem there last year. There was some impact data available. So we were putting out location and impact data from the forecast stages to the public so that people could see what was coming. Again, spreading the right word of impending rising waters and what impacts that will occur. There is a future for this impact information. Right now, everything's all text and worded, but there is a slow move afoot to go to actual inundation mapping. Our point locations are literally that. An impact at this location, at this stage, and a short reach upstream and downstream of that location on the river. The future is inundation mapping. And as you can see from this map, there are many, many fewer dots on this map for those official river forecast points and the impact information in an inundation format. In fact, here in the West, we have a sum total of 3 locations that have inundation mapping available for them. And we'll get to the reason why there's so few of them in a few minutes. So to get to these, they are only available off of the National Weather Service pages where we looked at those AHAPS data. And when you click on that dot for that official river forecast point, across the top are some tabs: hydrograph, river at a glance, download, and inundation mapping. That inundation mapping tab will only show up if there are inundation maps available for that location. In this case, I chose Carson River near Carson in Nevada. And there is, when you click on the inundation mapping button, you get this interface. So this is Carson City on a map type location. On the left-hand side are all the stages that they have done an aerial inundation layer for what happens and what gets impacted during those locations. On the screen that you're looking at now, you can see that 8 feet is what is selected. And in the north, you can see some white light areas, so there's a little bit of water outside the river channel, and it gets a little wider as you move straight south down the screen. But if I move forward and I select 10.5 feet, you'll see that the inundation area is much greater, much wider, especially in the north. And you'll notice that the colors are getting a little more blue. So that means the water's getting deeper in those locations. And I believe I did one more, 17 feet. So what you can see is on the Carson City, if the river reaches 17 feet, you get water somewhere in the 11 to 12 foot range at locations in the north. And this is me reading without my glasses, by the way. Lower down at the southern end, the water stays pretty much in the channel because we've moved back into a canyon. But it does impact more areas regionally higher up in that watershed there. So there are some benefits to the inundation mapping. The screen on the right is what I showed you, is one of the higher stage elevations for the Boise River at Boise, so you can see the flooding can get quite extensive. It's a graphical representation of a region, not just a point and a reach right along the river. They can be made in stage-based, is it 19 feet or 25,000 cubic feet per second, so stage or flow. It's easier to message by showing a picture. So this are some of those benefits. Unfortunately, there are some big limitations associated with those graphical images, those inundation maps. The reason for that is a lot of things, limitations. It's expensive. More than $10,000 APOC per location is how much it costs to do that. That cost is a cost that is covered and handled by the local agency. The National Weather Service does not pay for that. So it's expensive. The local agency involved, be it a flood control agency, county emergency services, or whatever, if they want those inundation maps, they have to commit to the money and the resources. It takes 1 to 2 years minimum to get through all the modeling and all the verification that has to happen at each of the layers that you define for the inundation mapping. So it is very man-intensive, so a lot of labor goes into those things. Your local National Weather Service office will help with the verification end of it, but we are not the leads on those projects. And space. These are very large files. Hosting them on that National Weather Service AHAPS page takes up a lot of space. So that's something we're always adding to those servers because the inundation maps are so space intensive. So, summary here. If you hear E19s or E19 data, think impact information and think the Weather Service wants more and we always want more. You listening to this presentation are the perfect people to be able to enhance what impact information we have available for each of our river forecast locations. You know that you get impacted when the river reaches 42 feet. Do you know that? Maybe I don't know that. Share with me. So contact your local Weather Service office for things like that. We'd love to hear more from you and hear about more impact information that you can give to us. And at this point, I'm ready for questions, David.
So any questions, just go ahead and write them in the chat, and I will get them to Cindy.
I hope somebody's typing.
Okay. Yes. So again, we will have the presentation available on the Watershed University website, and we are recording this presentation. We will get all that information up at the Watershed University web page very shortly. I have one question here. How can we find contact information for the National Weather Service offices?
The National Weather Service offices, you can actually Google or my contact information is on this page, I am perfectly willing to be an interface and put you in contact with the local hydrology person at the local Weather Service office. So drop me an email message and I'll get you to where you need to be.
Any other questions?
David, did I forget to cover anything?
No, I think you covered everything very well. So one question came in, a couple came in. Thanks. Keep the questions coming in. I tend to think that the National Weather Service data is the resource for the news agencies. Is that true?
That is true, because we will collect the information and document it and make it available to the media source, the media outlets. So yes, we are the source for that information. And they are very quick to tell us when we're wrong so that we can improve our information.
Great. Another one came in. Where can we get the form to submit information?
There is no actual form for submitting that information. The E19 form is an internal document for the Weather Service. The best way to do that is to email your local National Weather Service hydrology contact and pass the information via email, and then they'll start a conversation with you for confirmation and updating information on an impacts form. So again, I can be your clearinghouse for that to point you in the right direction to the right person.
Another one. What is the interface between this data point and the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, mapping, USGS, U.S. Geologic Service, stream gauge, and other data points?
The National Weather Service uses river forecast points, and there are gauges at those locations. We do not do the gauging. The USGS is actually the agency that runs the gauges and maintains those, and we just use the data from them. So that's the connection there. The FEMA inundation maps for the, oh, I've lost the word, 100-year floodplain graphics, those are separate from the point locations that the National Weather Service forecasts. Those deal with historical flooding at all waterways, not just the main stem rivers at particular locations. So there's not really a full connect there with that.
Another question came in. Is there any aim to have impact information provided more quantitatively, not just qualitative data? For example, water surface elevation of 45 feet equals X number of dollars in damages.
Because the dollar amounts and what the dollar's worth changes on a regular basis, we have documented some of those. 1997, 47 feet was $2.5 million or billion dollars, but that doesn't mean anything in 2017 dollars. So we do not include those impacted damage amounts in our E19 data because it's not necessarily completely valid for today's value of the dollar.
Great. Any other questions? So do stay tuned for the continuing education credit question. Another one came in. Can you place the year that the new impact information is obtained somewhere?
Well, some of that has been available for many years, so I wouldn't be able to date those. And the date would mean something to me internally, but not necessarily out in the public and for the media. You start putting a date on an impact, and some people will interpret it as, oh, that was in 2017. This is 2021. I don't have to pay attention to that. So the dates can be a little tricky. So we do not put the dates associated with those, though we do make the crest dates, past crests, with their associated date available on those web pages.
Another question came in. Do you have damage data for the Oroville Dam incident?
Oroville Dam incident is an incident being run by the state of California and the Department of Water Resources. It is not an actual Weather Service official forecast point, so I'm afraid I have no damage numbers associated with that. You would have to contact the California Department of Water Resources.
Great. Looks like that's it for the questions. Thank you very much, Cindy.